the new facts. So
yeah. I do love listening to commentaries, and I gotta track down the Blu-ray for this movie. Did you watch the was it the Arrow one?
Yes, yeah. Troy Howarth does the commentary for it, and he literally wrote the book on Fulci, Splinter's Vision. So
nice. All right, well, everyone, I believe we are live. John, can you see and hear us?
I can hear you and see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, your voice is nice and buttery and velvety, unlike before when you sounded like you were talking.
And you're
to like
so close to the camera. There we go. There we go. How about Cleveland?
Do I have to?
Well, welcome everybody to Accademia Giallo. After taking August off for a much needed kind of summer break, we are back, and we're going to be talking about Lucio Fulci's 1972 Giallo film, Don't Torture a Duckling, which was sort of a revelation to me. I knew Fulci from his later, more splatterific supernatural work, so I almost forgot I was watching a Fulci film. And I'm going to rely on my two talented guest hosts here to fill me in on all the backstory, the syllabus, as it were, for this movie. I am joined by Aaron Christensen, Dr. AC of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and John Kitley of Kitley's Crypt. You can find all of their information in the description down below. Please follow and like and subscribe and just check out all the stuff they're doing. And later in this episode, we'll talk about what AC and I, and also Mr. Kitley, have coming up later in the month of October, because scary season is almost upon us. It'll be very exciting. But yeah, so tonight, who wants to set up Don't Torture a Duckling?
Well, can we should probably pay homage to our brother in arms who's not with us this evening. So I'll let you do the honors.
And I told him in the email that I would show our respects, and I completely blew past it because I've had like 3 hours of sleep the last day.
Whatever.
Hey,
it's wasted on him anyway.
Wow, he's gonna watch this later.
That was for you, Brian.
Nice. Well, Bryan Martinez of the Giallo Room could not be with us tonight. He is he's preparing for a major life event. I think that's all we'll say, just to keep the personal, but it's all good stuff, all good news. And we wish him the best. And hopefully we'll be able to have him back on very soon to talk about more Giallo and horror. So congratulations preemptively, Bryan. I hope that's not a jinx. So
I think that just means he's going to watch Demons again.
He's going to be watching Demons as it's going on.
Yeah. Yet another life event.
Yes. Mr. Kitley, would you like to give us the synopsis for Don't Torture a Duckling?
Sure. It's one of Fulci's earlier films. It's a Giallo. It takes place in a rural Italian village town, and it's a harsh film because somebody is killing small boys from the area. It's not a happy film. There's a lot of red herrings going on as far as who might be the killer, but it's pretty. There's some brutal scenes in it, not necessarily the murder of the small boys, which is still kind of horrific, but it shows the small town. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a small town only in Italy. It's just a small town where a lot of superstition, a lot of people siding with certain people or outcasting certain people because they're different. One of the main characters is a priest, which Fulci always had a problem with religious or authority figures in general. So there's a lot of finger pointing. You have a scene in the very beginning with a small boy coming upon Barbara Boucher completely naked, and she's almost seducing him. And granted, the way it was filmed, he wasn't really there. They had a body double, but it's just that's in the first opening of the film, and it just sets you off that this is not a normal film. But I think it's one of Fulci's best. It delivers several very emotional, impactful scenes that, again, it shows that Fulci is not just known for his gore. or his, later the films he made later on. This was very well made, very stylized, and definitely has an impact on the viewer. How's that?
Oh, that's beautifully done, and yeah, it sums up pretty much everything I was thinking while watching this movie. I'd mentioned that I was more familiar with his later work, but what he, we don't have people vomiting up their intestines. We don't have giant, portals to the beyond opening up. But what we do have is some very adult subject matter dealing with adolescence, and as you mentioned, it's not like a movie where a bunch of kids die, where it's teenagers. These are like actual 12-year-old boys. And while you're right, the filmmakers, I think, go to great lengths to, or at least I assume and would hope, to make sure that there is no trauma going on during the filmmaking. It's so effective because you feel like these kids really are being chased down and attacked. Some really good performances there. I do like the term red herring, because one of those red herrings is actually a red herring. And you were referring to Miss Barbara Boucher, who has one of the most memorable introductions in movies that I've seen. She is a tenant in the house of this, small child. I think was it Michaela or is that him?
Yeah.
I can't keep getting the boys mixed up, but he goes upstairs to bring her juice or something, and she's like sunning herself, almost like she's at the beach. I guess she's got these like a sun lamp or something, but she's completely nude. She's got like the goggles or the dark sunglasses on, and it's a total Mrs. Robinson situation that goes really too far, and you kind of wonder what's going on with this lady. And I wondered that throughout the entire film, frankly. But so let's talk about, because you guys have seen this film before, possible multiple times. As we kind of do on all of these Accademia Giallo shows, it goes without saying, this is my first time watching this movie. But tell me about how you guys encountered it, where it came in your Fulci education, and what impact it made on you for the first time you saw it, and how does that still hold up today? Kitley, we kind of got your thoughts on the impact that it had on you. So we'll come back, and AC, why don't you start?
Well, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I was introduced to Fulci, kind of his Gortet, Zombie, The Beyond, Gates of Hell, and A House by the Cemetery. And this was, an effort to go deeper, because, I'd heard that that this was, one of his better films. It also didn't get a stateside release until 1999, I think, was when Anchor Bay put it out on DVD and VHS. And so
I didn't get, do you know if it got like a theatrical release?
It did not get it. It did not get a U.S. theatrical release, unlike Gates of Hell and The Beyond. It was released in Italy and other parts of Europe, but it did not was not in the U.S. until like I say, in the late 90s. And Anchor Bay put it out. So I'm certain that's where I first saw it. So it was probably, it's been like 15 years or so since I saw it for the first time. But I remember, there are certain scenes that immediately stuck with me, and they are the more visceral ones, the scene in the cemetery and the climax. But I've since, upon watching it a few more times, it's impressive on the, as John alluded, the idea of like the small town is really kind of the villain here. Yeah. It's everybody is it's such an insulated community, and everybody is looking for someone to blame, someone to point the finger at. There's a lot of, mob justice and, just taking matters into their own hands as we watch the police try and unravel the mystery. It's like every time, the cops try and come up with another clue, somebody else is taking matters into their own hands. Somebody is dying that is, for all intents and purposes, innocent. And yet they aren't innocent at the same time. The two people who are lynched and done away with are, they are guilty on some level. I forget the village idiot's name, but when he
Giuseppe, I think.
When Giuseppe, Giuseppe involves himself in this like bizarre kidnapping scheme in the hope of getting some money. And, Florinda Balkan, gets, she does try and kill these boys, even though she doesn't actually kill the boys. So it's a well textured.
Yes.
That's true. Who knows how influential she was? But it's a very textured, and I think it's a very there's a lot of subtleties being explored here, which is not necessarily Fulci's forte as his career went on.
I want to come back to that in a second, but John, I want to get your how many times have you seen the movie, first of all, and has it changed in your estimation? Has it grown stronger, or does it mean something else now than it did the first time you saw it?
The first time I saw it probably was on a bootleg of it before it was released over here. So you're talking probably mid-90s. And it was interesting to watch that first time because it is not like Fulci's, like Aaron said, what we have been kind of accustomed to. It gave me a chance to start to see Fulci as a better director. And I shouldn't say better, as a different kind of director than just the gore stuff. Playing with a lot of the emotions of the audience, because he does do that quite well in this film. But it also shows kind of the way Fulci felt about people, I think, because he doesn't seem to be that impressed with police, with the religion or the priests, with the ignorance of certain societies or certain people. And he plays on that throughout the entire film, where you're not really sure, is he not necessarily making fun of them, but I think he's pointing out the flaws of this small village, that they're not smart enough to figure out what's going on. It's pretty interesting, but on the same token, the scene with Florinda Balkan is so harsh and brutal, and it takes anything that Fulci is known for is, over the top, like the portal to hell. This is like all based in reality, and it's got this beautiful music playing, and she's brutally beaten. And it's so nonchalant, so it's not like an angry mob where everybody's all riled up. These guys are just standing around casually, just beating the crap out of her. That has more of an impact on me than even today. Every time I watch that scene is almost difficult to watch.
Very much so. Especially because you don't quite know exactly where she is in the story. I mean, all of these characters, there's so many different layers to explore here, because there's almost a supernatural element where she is the lady who, people in town kind of believe that she's a witch, that she had a child. And again, we're talking spoilers here, so we're going to kind of jump around the plot. So if you haven't seen Don't Torture a Duckling, please go out and check it out right now. You can watch it certain places for free. Oh, wait, 1 second. Got to acknowledge someone's sneaking into the comments here. Love you guys. Fulci lives. Bryan Martinez. And Naked Boucher had a super important impact on me. I'm sure she did. And she's just as impactful with her clothes on, I might mention. No, so this character, Machara, I think that was her name. I'll just call her Marcia. Her character evolves from the earliest parts of the film, to her ultimate demise. In Giallo films, a lot of the times we see the mysterious black-clad killer preparing, weapons, preparing to strike against, the victims. In this case, we kind of know who it is right off the bat. She's not wearing black. She's just like kind of hanging out in a cave, and she has these wax voodoo dolls, essentially, that she's sticking pins in. We still don't quite know what her deal is. But the town legend is that she had, if I have this right, that she had a child. She killed the child because she was convinced that it was the devil's child. And then years and years later, all these dead kids start, showing up in the town. And she is caught, confesses to having ritually, done stuff with these dolls. And she even kind of confesses to the murders, but the police are like, but that doesn't make any sense because your alibi doesn't, match up. So even after she gets kind of Freddy Kruegered with the fathers of the boys who were killed showing up in the graveyard, cornering her, and as you guys mentioned, beating her within an inch of her life, she crawls along to the highway within, inches of salvation, but she just isn't strong enough to kind of lift herself up and like flag someone down. But even though I feel like she was in view of some of these cars, nobody stops to help her.
Right.
Yeah, they watch her. As they drive by, there's 2 or 3 people that look over at her and just continue on.
Yeah. And then she dies, but my point is, because there's this supernatural element that's sort of introduced, because they keep bringing up, oh, it was the child of the devil, or, something supernatural is going on, and they're doing, voodoo and stuff. There is a part of me, and also knowing that I'm watching a Fulci film, that there might be a supernatural element. Is she going to come back? Is she going to manifest some kind of like supernatural powers to, turn the tables on the guys in the graveyard? So I never was quite sure where I stood with her character, with any of the characters in this movie. And that's not a complaint, because at the end, when you find out it was just people who were kind of slave to various religious beliefs, that almost makes it scarier than anything you could see coming through a hell portal. I do want to start out by saying this has one of the most impressive, I think, visual thesis statements of a lot of films, where by the end you realize it is this kind of a comment on superstition and tradition versus the modern world with detectives and research and science and law. We start off by seeing the winding kind of metal highway, like the overpass that leads into this town, and you see the boys kind of like playing along it, and then the redhead Patricia, Barbara Boucher's character, she's known in the town as being the outsider rich kid whose daddy, is letting her stay in his opulent house. They mentioned that it's the new construction that doesn't look like it belongs there. She's had kind of drug problems, so she has a reputation. So nobody in town trusts her. And we, the audience, don't trust her off the bat because of what she's done to and with possibly this young boy. So even she's kind of off kilter. So we're forced to question, why do we think a certain way about people, and why, how people look and how people act. So there's the superstitious town justice. 300 years ago, it wouldn't have been a big deal for a bunch of guys to get together and stone the witch to death. Now today we have cops who are supposed to do that, but nobody believes in them. So you're just going to have a bunch of guys get together and stone the town witch to death. It's beautiful, and it's more layered than anything I've seen in later Fulci, and I kind of makes me wish we'd see more of that later on. What do you guys think?
I think that's the way the film opens, like you said, with that shot of that highway going through this middle of like nowhere. And I think at some point, one of the cops mentions that we can build a highway, but we can't fight superstitions or something like that. Again, I think Fulci showing his point that certain places the people are not educated; they're still believing superstitions. Florinda Balkan's character, she did believe she killed the kids because of her ritual and stuff. Because there's even a part, if I remember correctly, when at one of the funerals, there's a shot of her in the back, and she actually smiles very quickly. She kind of grins. I mean, it's just, again, giving the audience going, well, obviously that's her. She's the killer. But again, I think it all goes back to Fulci just pointing the spotlight on ignorance, on whether it's the police, because once again, the police do not figure this crime out. It's a reporter and Barbara Boucher, and the reporter is Thomas Milan. So it's not the authority figures that figure everything out. It's some outsiders that are apparently smarter than the locals, even the police locals.
Well, going back to the that reporter, Andrea Martelli is the character's name. there's a scene towards the later part of the film where Patricia is brought in for questioning after I think one of the last boys is found murdered. She has this hysterical scene in the police station. Then there's a hard cut to her kind of confidently talking to the reporter, on a balcony or something like that. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Are they conspiring? Are they in on the killings? Like, what is happening? And it gets kind of confusing towards the end once the truth begins to come out and we find out who the protagonists of this movie, are. But I don't know. It just kind of threw me for a loop because they didn't seem, neither Martelli or Patricia seem particularly heroic. I guess that's more of Fulci's thinking that, even the good guys are horribly, horribly flawed.
The anti-hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's even subtler than that in that we don't have any clear heroes. We have villains, but we also just have, they're just people being people, and they have their flaws. I mean, I think, the Barbara Boucher character, I mean, yes, she does things that are questionable societally. And yet, we also get the sense that she's not a bad person, at her core, but she does do things that, have questionable judgment to them. This is this is the third film that Fulci did with producer Edmondo Amati. The first two being One on Top of the Other, aka Perversion Story, and then Beatrice Cinzi, which is this film, Don't Torture a Duckling, and Beatrice Cinzi were two of Fulci's personal favorites. And I think he would have liked to have done more of these kind of just subtler examinations of the human condition. Beatrice Cinzi is very much that of, like watching this woman, take vengeance on the nobleman, who destroyed her family. But it's incredibly textured. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it wasn't a financial success. I don't think this movie was a huge financial success. I think it may have done okay in Europe, but obviously it wasn't big enough to get exported. So it wasn't until, Zombie came along that Fulci really kind of exploded onto the scene.
So you're saying he might have just kind of followed where the success took him?
Well, yeah. And on the commentary, Troy Howarth talks about, he is a journeyman director in the truest sense. He was working in various genres, just kind of going where the work was, but always kind of putting his own personality in all the films. It never feels impersonal. And I want to bring up like Sergio Martino as an example. Like Sergio Martino just did really great work in a lot of different genres, but you never get kind of a sense of his personal stamp. Whereas with Fulci, I feel like you do. You get a sense that this is a Fulci film, even if it's not the Fulci film you thought it was going to be. It still feels like there's his personality running through it.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think is the Fulci stamp? What's the through line between, say, this film and something like, Zombie or City of the Living Dead?
Well, I think, and John, I see you inhaling to drop in as well. So, but I mean, my feeling is that this is Fulci's opportunity. The idea of outcasts come through a lot of his work that he, like with say Gates of Hell, you've got Bob the outsider who is, subsequently put to death by, when he didn't do anything wrong. Like we have those kind of the outliers that Fulci always makes a point of bringing them up and showing that even though they're different, that doesn't mean they're guilty.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
I would say that was a big transition between once he got into the gore stuff, he started to get, I think, more into surrealism and more imagery than character development, because a lot of his later films, the characters aren't as well developed as in the previous ones. But I still think Fulci's, if you're looking for a stamp, it's his dislike of authority. whether it be police, God forbid, doctors or psychiatrists, anybody like that. He was tend to either make them look bad or just downplay the fact that they're not really helping anything.
Like sharks.
Well, just doing what they do.
Yeah, yeah. But once he got into, I think the problem was once he had real success with Zombie and then Gates of Hell and stuff, I think that was the only work he was getting. He was being offered. So, and then his budget started to decline, and it was harder and harder to get decent people on the film to make the films look as good as they did. And he got kind of bitter and kind of pissed off at the whole thing. But it's one of those things that, we're, as horror fans, we're thrilled that he was able to make Zombie and The Beyond and City of the Living Dead. But on the same token, that was kind of like writing his death warrant when it came to being a journeyman filmmaker, because that's all he was offered.
One thing that popped into my head when you mentioned you first saw this on a bootleg VHS tape. Two things, actually. Since the thrill of getting to see like a Fulci film that wasn't available anywhere, did that add to the experience? Do you think that made the movie better in your mind? Or was it already just so cool that didn't factor in? And secondly, I assume this was a bootleg tape, the quality wasn't amazing. So
No.
The priest dummy, as it falls down the cliff at the end and sparks are coming out of its face as it hits the rock, did that look any better in the bad definition? Because it doesn't need to be in HD.
One of the benefits of those bootleg days where the quality was not crisp and nice and clear. So a lot of that stuff got passed by. We're not really seeing the detail. I don't remember what the original source material was for that bootleg. A lot of stuff came from Turkey, oddly enough, or not Turkey, Greece. Sorry, Greece. So you always had the subtitles from different languages at the bottom. The quality was always atrocious because especially if it's coming from PAL source, it's converted to NTSC, so that makes it even worse. But it was anytime you got to see a Fulci film that you had not seen before, that was special. Especially when you're starting to see his older work before he got, like we said, before he got famous. But yeah, that scene never worked, and unfortunately, he didn't learn much better when he did kind of the same scene in the beginning of The Psychic.
Right.
The face doesn't spark, but it's almost identical sequence.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it now because it comes at the end, it almost undoes one's estimation of the movie.
Yeah,
because that's what you remember. You remember this uber fake dummy in close-up slow motion, and I'm like, oh wow. I mean, this is, it's so patently fake, even though it's splattery, but it's just kind of goofy. And coming at the end of such a powerful emotional film, like I say, I remember like that was kind of my takeaway for years, and then I went back and watched it, maybe 5 or 6 years later, and I went, oh, that's right. It's actually a good movie just with a bad ending.
And that's the thing is it's kind of shocking because I think about the effects that he was able to pull off in his later films. I feel like if you were to go back and special edition the end of this movie, they could have really made it special. Because I like the idea of it. And I like that it's a vehicle for these flashback scenes where we're kind of made to understand what was really going on with this priest. Every time his head is bashed against a rock as it's on the way down, it's like flashback, flashback.
Right.
And it's a great idea, but in execution, and the flashbacks are cool too because they're really kind of sinister and creepy, and they recontextualize some of the same flashback material we saw earlier in the film. But I gotta be honest with you. I was at a loss at the end of this movie, and I had to go back and look at Wikipedia to read the synopsis to find out why he was killing these boys. Because and this might sort of be a byproduct of the red herring thing, because Marcia or Maritza or whatever her name is, the lady got killed by the side of the highway, or died by the side of the highway. She was performing these kind of rituals, but the lore around the voodoo dolls, there's some talk throughout the film, like the number 13 keeps coming up, and we never see the killer really, but there is a tie between these voodoo dolls and the actual murders. So I was thinking somehow she was sticking the pins in these dolls and activating someone in the town to go out and kind of do the bidding. And I thought it might have been Patricia, because she kind of had this, we kept seeing her either waking up or kind of coming to or being freaked out like she didn't know where she was. So I thought that maybe she was being framed by this magic to carry out the will of the person controlling the doll. Turns out that's not true. It was just the priest, and the voodoo doll thing was completely disconnected, or maybe it was.
Well, certainly coincidental, whether it was causal.
Right. But so Wikipedia taught me, and I assume you can vouch for this or not, but it was the priest was so and this checks out because of some speeches he gives earlier in the film about pornography and keeping certain things out of the town, and there being a shack in the woods where prostitutes would go and lure men, and they'd kind of like do their thing. He really believed in these kids. He taught them soccer, and he wanted to keep them pure and keep the devil out of their lives. So he decided he would kill them so that their spirits could enter heaven without the inequities of earth, tainted on them. Interesting idea, but unless I missed that somewhere in the movie, I didn't get that from what was actually presented. Did I miss something?
I believe it's either when the priest is talking during those flashbacks, some like dialogue that he had, he mentions that he's saving them from the terrors to come. It's either him or maybe I think it was him.
It's when he's carrying the girl up the mountain. Like you hear his inner thoughts.
I guess I'd have to go back and watch it again, because I do remember that, and I was kind of confused. I'm like, what is he talking about?
Right,
because sure. I think at that point, honestly, and maybe it's because I'd only slept 3 hours last night, but there was a part of me that wasn't convinced that he was the villain, or at least the intentional villain, when he's taking that the deaf mute girl up the top of the hill to throw her off. I was convinced that he thought that she was possessed, or like the source of the evil or something. Whether or not it was true or not, he was convinced that was true, so he was going to purify the town by getting rid of the evil, and it was up to our reporter and our Patricia to stop him and say, no, you've got this all wrong. She's innocent. But no, it turns out he was just this horrible monster, which led to, honestly, one of the most thrilling fights I've ever seen. My hand was up like this for like the climactic pre-dummy falling down the mountain.
Yes.
Those 3 minutes were amazing.
First off, I want to just say I want to watch all the movies that you think the movies are going to be, because they're all incredible. I'm like, oh yeah, that would be good. It's too bad that that's not what the movie actually is, because the movie that Ian's got going on is amazing. Apparently Thomas Millian and the guy who plays the priest, they didn't necessarily like each other in real life. And so there may have been some real action going on in the fight on the mountainside. So you might have picked up on that.
It's so rough, and I think part of it is because the movie is so nasty leading up to this. It wouldn't put it past me for Fulci's ultimate message to be evil disguised as good is going to win. Mm-hmm. So both Patricia and Martelli are going to get thrown off that cliff, probably along with the little girl, and the priest is just going to go whistling back down to his parish, getting away scot-free.
Right.
But no, evil is ostensibly punished. But, when they're fighting each other on top of this mountain, and it doesn't look like stunt people. At least I didn't, pick up on that. It looked like they were always actually up there wrestling around, choreographed as well as it could be, but still someone could just, tumble the wrong way and down they go. Plus the grabbing by the foot and then hoisting backwards, brilliant stuff. Even though I wanted that guy to bite it, I still wasn't prepared for the gasp when he flipped over.
Oh, yeah. I think it's also, I mean, like just kind of in the moments preceding that, where the priest's mother, has spirited the girl away to this cave, and you think, oh, she's the one, she's been, she's doing something nefarious, because she's been kind of just lurking in the background throughout, and so you're kind of like, oh, maybe she's the one, and so when he comes in and takes the girl away from her. And then you realize that not only is he, the villain, but she knew about it.
Yeah.
She's been aware of her son's crimes all along, and having to kind of live with that and try and cover up for him, but also try and prevent him from doing it again. Again, just kind of like just another neat little layer character detail that wasn't necessary, but is certainly welcome.
Because I think at one point she calls the police to finger somebody else. Either it's Barbara Boucher or somebody, to try to put the police looking in another direction, when, like Aaron said, she knew all along that her son's doing this.
Man. Yeah, I don't think I picked up on that last bit of a detail, because by the time that all happens, I was swept up in all the other stuff. The priest, was it Mark Porrell, looks uncannily like Cillian Murphy, the actor who played Scarecrow in Batman Begins. So I kept thinking, if they ever remade this movie, they've got the perfect bit of casting. What are we to make of George Wilson playing Francesco, the town, the other town hermit / dabbler in magic?
That's a weird character in there, because you have no idea what he's doing. He's almost like highly regarded, but then Barbara Boucher goes over there for something, and the Florinda Balkan goes over there. He's just like, he's another one of those elements that's, you want to put the spoilers on, or at least he's in cahoots with somebody. And at the end of the movie, you're like, oh, he had nothing to do with pretty much anything.
Yep.
Because at the moment he's going through at night when the kid's trying to meet somebody in the rain, and he's whipping through the bushes like he's clearing a path or something. So again, you're going, okay, well, shit, he's in on something, but no, nothing.
Just out there in the rain.
Well, even then, getting back to the kind of voodoo element, the little boy is out there hiding in the woods, in this kind of overgrowth bush, and because I can't do one of these shows without mentioning something from the Friday the 13th series, I immediately thought of young Corey Feldman in the opening of Part 5, going into the woods and stalking Jason. In this case, it was somebody sort of stalking him, but he was trying to stay away from out of the path of this scythe. I was thinking that he might accidentally just get killed out there. I didn't get the feeling it was deliberate. I just thought there was this crazy old man who's like decided, what's a good time to go clear some of this greenery in the middle of a thunderstorm, because he's just kind of casually doing it. There's no malice or intent, like he's hunting something. He's just out there doing it. So I thought, if he kills this boy, then maybe that is part of this voodoo magic. It's not that the doll is going to make it so that someone goes out and deliberately kills him. It's just kind of like a Final Destination thing. He will die somehow tonight.
I mean, I now that we're talking about, like, the idea of the voodoo dolls, like how kind of exciting and vindicating for Florinda Balkan's character to have cast this death spell and then to have people actually die. That must have been like, the first time that had happened for her. So she must have been like, wow, it worked.
That's why she was smiling at the funeral.
Yeah, just going to say.
It's like, dang. I got this, man. I'm really good at this now.
Well,
Uh-oh.
that this is all just a coincidence, or do you think that somehow this black magic that she and Francesco had been practicing in this town all this time had somehow just manifested, but not in the controlled way that they might have hoped?
No, I think she's just crazy. I mean, she was, and you know what? Let me rephrase that. She wasn't crazy. She had a lot of emotional issues from her past, and again, being everybody in the town knows or thinks they know what's wrong with her, or that there's superstition stuff going on. So it just plays her life plays into that, goes down that path, because that's the way everybody thinks. That's the way she thinks about herself. And she was pissed at these three boys for screwing around by her son's grave. So she's going to put a hex on them. Yep. And holy shit, they actually end up dying. So she's just like, yeah, it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very Mrs. Voorhees of her, I might add.
No. Not going to let that one go.
This is a square peg in the round hole. I have to try every time.
Okay, no, here's the important question, Ian.
Uh-oh.
Where was the bottle of J&B?
I don't know. Now, here's the thing. Was there a bottle of J&B? Because I kept looking.
Yes, there was. There was.
Damn it. I got to go find it. Was it in Patrice's place?
Yes.
Or was it?
Yeah.
And,
okay.
and that's probably why you may have noticed it, but then right after they show that, you see her completely naked. So your memory probably got lost. And
well, they do show it again at the toward the end when he goes to visit. When Tomas Millian goes to visit her
in the apartment or the house,
they're talking about the book of black magic.
Yeah,
it's sitting on the table across from him.
So it's in there twice, Ian.
Damn it. Well, here's the thing. The first time, I didn't think to look for the bottle until about halfway through the movie. And when I was halfway through the movie, I'm like, I'm not going to go rewind looking for a bottle of J&B. But then I completely missed it during the second reference. So, yeah, that's on me. But I will go back and look for it this time, just so I can say that I have.
Good thing Martinez isn't here, because he would have totally been bummed.
Yeah.
Well, what was during Troy's commentary? He actually did the whole background of J&B. He talked about like its origins. That it was an Italian, who brought Scotch whiskey to Italy, and it's like, and I'm like, well, technically it's not Scotch whiskey then, because Scotch whiskey only can be done in Scotland, but. It was a fascinating little explanation, a little bit of trivia that I did not know.
You are selling the hell out of that Arrow Blu-ray. This is not a sponsored live stream, but I feel like it should be. I got to get that. Is there? Oh, I do want to talk about something else, and maybe Kitley, you can answer this, and it kind of goes back to the bootleg question I was asking before. It isn't just the priest dummy that's problematic. When the first drowned kid shows up, a lady is going out to do her laundry or something early in the morning. She looks over and sees this dead kid in the pool, and it's this, rubbery, play-doughy, shock-faced little boy with like fright wig hair. What was going on there?
Well, it's the distortion of the water. That's why it looked bad.
Also, I think that's a terrifying little dummy. Like, I think that image is like, even though it's not real, it's freaky. Like,
it is.
That one worked for me.
Here's the thing. If I were going to do my laundry or whatever in the morning, and I looked over and I saw that, yes, that would freak me out. But knowing that that's supposed to be the body of an actual human being.
Yes.
No. Did not work at all.
I do think we need to talk about Riz Ortolani's musical score.
Yeah.
What did you think of that, Ian? Did that make an impression on you?
I hate to say it, but no. And part of that might be the conditions under which I watched this movie.
Sure.
Very little sleep and chopped up into two segments. The first of which started at 4:30 in the morning, and the second I watched the last 25 minutes, I think at like 4 o'clock this afternoon. So it was all broken up, and I was zeroed in on the story, my crazy theories, and all this other stuff. The parts where the music really stuck out to me was in that graveyard scene.
That's right.
Because as Marcia is, when she first comes upon the scene, she sees the first car up on the hill and a guy kind of getting out of the car and giving some kind of a signal to someone off screen. And then he turns on his radio conspicuously, really loudly.
Yep.
And it wasn't, I don't think it was Christian rock specifically, but they did mention something about God or Jesus. I was like, okay. And then there's like this crazy soul song that plays during the main kind of beating. I thought that was really powerful and weird. And it just underscored how wrong this whole situation was. Well, it's very modern music for a very ancient kind of, mob justice.
Right. And Ortolani also does a similar thing in Cannibal Holocaust. During, like, there's a scene where the village is burning and he plays this like beautiful love, like almost like a love theme over it. And so, like he does a nice job of kind of playing against the imagery that you're seeing on screen with like these really kind of lovely lyrical melodies. And in this case, it's kind of like like you said, kind of a soulful, like jazz song that's playing on the radio. But yeah, I really, he's somebody who I think the more Italian films you watch, especially giallos and horror, like you'll see Rizzo Ortolani's
he did a few
name pop up time and time again. He's one of the masters.
Well, I do want to mention, I wrote this down. I have the note here. It reminded me sort of like something out of Reservoir Dogs. I wonder if Tarantino is at all influenced by this film in particular with the K-Billy super sounds of the 70s, because the soul music cuts, and then it says, you have the radio DJ saying, "A change of mood now." And then this other music starts playing. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, I mean, Tarantino actually uses Ortolani in, I think, one of the Kill Bills.
Oh, well, okay.
Crap, what's his name? Fabio Frizzi's from The Psychic. The seven notes. That's used in one of the Kill Bill films as well. So cool. Tarantino's obviously well versed in a lot of the Italian, the music and stuff that he's always borrowing.
Oh, sure. And I don't doubt that. I was just wondering about that specific idea of having the the radio, not just music on the radio, but the actual personality of the DJ coming into the scene and kind of making that important.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Plus the whole juxtaposition of, like in Reservoir Dogs, the cop or the Michael Madsen cutting off the cop's ear during that song that you'll never hear again and not think of that scene. It's an upbeat tempo song and Michael Madsen's dancing around cutting the guy's ear off. So
yeah, I don't know if he ruined Stuck in the Middle with You or it made it better, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was actually made a list. Someone did a list a few years ago of songs that movies changed forever. I think it was "Be My Baby" might have been one from Mean Streets for Scorsese. If I had that song correct, there was like one other, but that and "Stuck in the Middle with You" from Reservoir Dogs were the top three. But yeah, so I'm sorry to say, and when I watch this movie again, hopefully in stunning high definition, I'll pay more attention to what's going on in the score and the soundtrack. But yeah, I was watching with other things in mind today, and once you see Barbara Boucher in all her glory, like I can't concentrate on anything else. Really,
pretty glorious.
It really is.
What was your overall takeaway, Ian?
My overall takeaway, and what you guys are saying about Fulci's later career makes a lot of sense, but I just wish I could visit that alternate universe where he was able to take the commercial success of his, as you mentioned, gore-tet, which I think is a lovely term, and fuse it with the storytelling, the characters, and the kind of thematic nuance that he has in this movie. I think that, as much as he changed horror or, revolutionized things or inspired people, I think that combination of those two elements of the craft combined would have made him absolutely legendary. And I kind of want to see what those movies would have been like.
Well, the positive to that is because of all the movies that are coming out on Blu-ray, you can see a lot of his older films that do show that, maybe not have the huge budget,
Right.
but there are plenty of his older films that are out that you do see the craftsmanship in his work and what he was really. It just shows how talented of a filmmaker he was before he got pigeonholed into making gore films.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody watching this to think that I'm dissing Fulci or whatever, because I think I've loved what I've seen of his filmography in the different modes that he's worked. I just wish that he would have been able to take all of those tools at the height of his powers and done something cool with them. But yeah, that's a great point, John, because AC, what was that movie you were talking about, the one he did before this? It was like a woman's name.
Oh, Beatrice Chenzi.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I gotta find that. Do you know if is that out?
I found it on YouTube back in April when I was researching for April Fulci. But it was, it's really terrific. It's a historical drama, but there's enough kind of exploitation elements in there that it would satisfy, I would think, most horror fans.
Yeah, it deals with slightly the Inquisition and torture, and I know it got released on an import DVD, but I want to say I heard someone who was supposed to be putting that out over here. I just don't remember who it is, but I would recommend it. And yeah, if you're looking for one of Fulci's gore films, this is not one. It's a completely different film, but again, it's really well made.
And Perversion Story, aka One on Top of the Other, is I think his first giallo, and it's terrific. It was one that I'd heard about for years, and when I finally caught up with it, it was kind of like, oh wow, this is really good. Because kind of I think oftentimes like Don't Torture a Duckling is the one that's kind of mentioned a lot in terms of his best giallo, but One on Top of the Others is right up there, and there's some definite twists that you will not see coming.
Sold. All right, we got to talk about that at some point. But yeah, I think. Do you have any final thoughts on Don't Torture a Duckling? I feel like we've gone over it pretty well. We're missing anything?
I will a quick story about this film. That's kind of humorous. Years and years ago, my son he made a list of all these movies that I'm always talking about, and he was gonna spend one day watching them. And he had a whole list, and Don't Torture a Duckling was on there. And he had a randomizer and pick on his phone, so he was gonna randomly pick a movie to watch. Don't Torture a Duckling was the first one. And I'm at work and I get a text and he's like, okay, I'm starting. First one is called this. And I just texted back, have fun. And hour and a half later, he texted me back, man, I don't know if I want to watch anymore right now. Completely wrecked him.
Was it the priest dummy? Was that what did it?
He didn't even really mention that. It was just how brutal it was, but not in the over the top gore. It's just the scene with Florinda Balkan. Like I said, it's hard to watch. It is so brutal.
Yeah.
And again, because the fact that the crowd's it's not like a mob mentality where they're all screaming and they just act out of rage. It's calm, and they're just standing there beating her, and it's really, really terrible.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting because like we haven't been given a lot of information so as that we would sympathize with her. Like we come to understand where she's coming from. We understand she's a damaged individual, but when we see her in that scene, it's that sense of nobody deserves this.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether she tried to kill them with voodoo or not, nobody deserves this. And whereas the fathers think that they are meting out justice, she has confessed to it. Therefore, she's guilty.
Well, it's not that I'm sympathizing with the fathers necessarily, but I understand where they're coming from.
Sure.
Because it's not like this happened years ago. This is all within like a week or so that these murders have happened. This close-knit group of 12-year-old boys all end up dead, horribly murdered, and the killer is among them, and they think
Right.
that they know who it is. So if you look at their faces, you're right, John. They're not like, drooling and screaming. They're almost in a daze. You could tell they've probably been up for the week since they found out that their kids have been dead. They're
Yeah.
not in the right place. They're all seeing red.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, but that also adds to the tragedy of it. Like,
Right.
if they had clearer heads, if someone had said, "Are you really going to beat a woman to death in a cemetery?" when
Right.
it hasn't even been proven what happened, or maybe she's just got problems and maybe she's not even the one. They
Right.
probably would have been like, "No, you're right. I'm just going to go back over here and cry some more." But they were probably all feeding off of each other's grief and manifesting the evil that, that's why I kind of wondered about this voodoo stuff. Like, was it summoning something in the town that was causing this confluence, all this terrible behavior? But to what you were saying, Kitley, Fulci's low estimation of people, it might just be like, no, this is just who we are.
This is who we are as humans.
Yeah.
Well,
one fun fact before you wrap up is that the original title for the movie was "Don't Torture Donald Duck," and because you have the Donald Duck doll that comes into play, and apparently the Disney company was like, no, you can't actually say "Don't torture Donald Duck," and so they had to change it to little duck or duckling as the translation.
I also like that when we do finally see the Donald Duck on that newspaper front page, every time we cut back to it, there's like a sting. It's like, and there's the duck again. It's just the most sinister, innocent looking Donald Duck you've ever seen. But no, thank you guys very much for this wonderful class in Giallo, not just this episode, but all of the episodes. I feel like I'm learning a lot, and I never would have thought that this was in Fulci's wheelhouse. So I'm excited to go and do some more homework, as it were. So I will leave it there, except to say that October is coming up. So those of you out there who are watching this either live or coming to us, in the next few days, be sure and check out the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel, because we're going to be doing Friday Night Frights once again, all October long, for Scarathon, in benefit of Mr. AC's annual tradition of watching as many horror films as you can during the month of October and raising money for a very good cause, which, AC, if you'll remind us once again, what is that cause?
This year will be for Albany Park Theater Project, and we can talk more about that on Friday when we kick things off on October 1st.
Yes, and it's going to be a double feature of anniversary films, the Universal monster movies of Frankenstein and Dracula. So those of you who have been following our ongoing series Hammerland this year, we've been talking about the Hammer versions of Frankenstein and Dracula. Now we're taking it all the way back to the Universal monster movies, which, spoiler alert, I have never seen before. So this is going to be. Yeah.
Oh my gracious! I was just going to say. I was going to say, Ian. Like, part of the pleasure of doing this, the Accademia Giallo, is watching you having watched these movies, but now finding out that you have not seen the classic Frankenstein or Dracula. First off, I'm glad you're going to finally check those boxes, but I'm really excited. If you can, make that time sacred so you're not watching it at in installments, and because this is important stuff.
I gotta say, I have the Universal, one of the many Universal box sets that they put out that has like all the movies on it.
Right.
So I finally get to dust it off. But I'm not completely ignorant of the Universal catalog. I have seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I loved. And I've seen Bride of Frankenstein, which I think is a masterpiece. So I've got these. Yeah, it's my filmography is really kind of spotty. So I'm gonna, as you mentioned, tick some big boxes, and you'll be there to talk me through it. Yeah, and then we'll be coming back. I think middle of the month with John. You're going to be on board to talk. We're going to do another Accademia Giallo in a few weeks. That's going to be a viewer request. The Killer reserved 9 seats, which we'll see what that's all about. And many more special things to come, possibly with some special guests. But every Friday night, I think 7:30 we're going to try for live right here on YouTube. And actually, I forgot to mention, we are broadcasting not only on YouTube, but now on Facebook and Twitter, because I can do that now. So we've had quite a number of people popping in and out. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Please smash that like button, as it were. Give a subscribe if you're not subscribed. Tell all your friends. Check out my lovely and talented friends' work down in the description below. Love to Mr. Bryan Martinez, who couldn't be here tonight, but for very, very good reason. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks very much, gentlemen, and good night.
Good
wait,
night,
no,
sir.
no. School's class dismissed, or class dismissed. Yeah, that sounds much better / worse.
See you in October.